The following is a paid advertisement for the
Sale trick-taking game.
brought to you by
All Play, formerly BoardGameTables.com.
Louisville, Colorado.
Hi, Billy Plays here, and I'm here to talk to you about the game Sail. Has this ever happened to you? You're sitting here on a pirate ship and a Kraken shows up. Ouch! Ooh, that might be you. Maybe that was you. Ouch! Oh, hopefully that's probably not you. You're probably dead. And have other pirate-themed games not prepared you for the life at sea? Don't spend hours and hours at the gym trying to train your body when you should be playing Sail. Order now and we'll throw in the prettiest cover you ever done, Sar, with your very own eye. See, Sail does it better than the other competitors because the hook to this game is it's a cooperative two-player trick-taking game. That's right, you and a fellow pirate will be taking on the open seas and the Kraken itself trying to navigate the perilous waters. And if you call now, call now. Isn't it like a Kickstarter? So order now for the price of, what's USD to doubloons? Doubloons, DBL, I think? No, not double, DBL, if you search DBL, like on Google, like search DBL. Yeah, I don't know how to spell doubloons, it's like D-O, oh, Kickstarter doesn't even take doubloons? Ooh. Convert your doubloons to a modern currency and then come on down to the Kickstarter. Or stay watching this video and come to the poop deck and I will show you how to play Sail. Here's the deck for Sail, and remember this is a prototype, so the final art may look different, but it's 3 suits, numbered 1 through 9, and the suits actually aren't the symbol underneath the rank. Those are important for the gameplay later, which I'll explain. The 3 suits are actually blue, gray, and green. Here we have Sail partly set up, so players are going to assemble the board by putting together a puzzle piece board and laying down these tiles to form the map here. As you can see to the left, that's where they start. They'll put the boat on the start tile, and the goal of the game is they just are trying to navigate the boat all the way down to the end, the 3 anchor end tile. Players will also get roles, and as you can see, we have these 2 dealt, so maybe this player is that role and this player is this role, and on the bottom they have symbols telling what they do, but using these other ones here because there's a bunch of roles in the game, you can flip it and they also have descriptions on what they do. Next we have these player aids which help players know what certain actions do in the game, and they also have a very helpful deck makeup which I'll be using for the teach. And then we have this round tracker board, trick tracker board, and then also the discard, supply, and the character cards. So this will be sliding up, and this is where players will play their tricks and then keep track of the number of tricks they win in the round. This board also keeps track of the number of rounds because there's only 5 rounds max. So this tentacle will go on the first round. Also, this is where the discard goes and the supply, which is important for the gameplay. And then over here, we have the Kraken tracker, which starts at 3 and goes all the way to dead. And then below, it has the Kraken deck. This is at the very start of the game, going to be made up of this card here, which I'll explain what it does in a little bit, and then the 1s and 2s of each suit, kind of shuffled, put on top of here, and then placed right below. Finally, we're going to take the rest of the deck, shuffle it, give 9 to each player, and then any left over get dealt face down to the supply. So with the setup done, I'm going to give a brief overview of how the game functions. So it's a cooperative game, meaning the players are trying to win together against the Kraken and the game. So there's a lot of ways to lose the game. I think there's about 4, which I'll cover as I explain the game. But the one way to win is to get the ship to the safety, these 3 anchor tiles. I'll explain how, but players are going to be playing tricks, and in the trick play, players will be moving the ship across the tiles here. If they ever land on a Kraken spot, that's bad. The islands will block their movement, and essentially they're going to be navigating the ship all the way to here. So how the game functions is in phases. The first phase of the game is the exchange phase. So simultaneously, players are going to pick a card from their hand and pass it face down to their partner. Some powers can change this, like some players get to look at the card that gets passed to them before they pass a card, but for the most part, players are just going to pass a card each face down. After that, then the trick play is going to start. One player is going to always start the trick, and then it's going to oscillate back and forth between the 2 players. So for the first round, let's say the top player is going to lead to the first trick. I moved it over a little bit so you can see it on the camera, but the top person is going to lead to the first trick. Let's say they play this 7 green with the wheel on it. Sail is a must-follow game, meaning looking at this bottom person's hand, they have to play one of their greens. So they have a choice between a 5 cannon symbol and an 8 wheel symbol. So let's say they played the 8 wheel symbol. As I mentioned in the deck makeup, the suits underneath the ranks in the cards aren't actually the suits. So even though those were wheel, as you can see in the green suit, there was a cannon or there are a bunch of different symbols. So how the game works is, if the two symbols on the cards are showing up on this action combinations, then an action will trigger. So as you can see, we just triggered the very first action. So wheel, because there was a 7 that had the wheel on the bottom one and the 8 that had the wheel on the bottom. That means that the ship will move toward the winner of the trick. So since the 8 beat the 7, the player this way won the trick, so they're going to move the ship toward them. And as you can see, because of the diamond layout, there's always one closer to a certain player, meaning you'll move the ship to the diamond closer to this player. In classic trick-taking fashion, the winner is going to lead to the next trick, so you're just going to discard the cards that were played. You're going to increase the number of tricks won by that player, and then they're going to lead to the next trick. Why you're doing this is because when any or either of the players wins their 4th trick, the round ends immediately. So let's say this player closest to us won 3 more tricks, the round would end. And that is bad in this game. You're trying to get the most out of your tricks. So ideally, maybe the person only wins 2 more and then the other player wins 3 or 4, because then you'll use more tricks in the round and hopefully move the ship farther. Let's look at the other actions that are possible. So as you can see in the next 2 spaces, if it's a wheel and then a wheel tentacle, and the wheel tentacle, again, if we flip the deck makeup card, it's on the 1s, 2s, and 3s of each suit. Since it's a wheel and a tentacle, and still it's 2 wheels, the ship still moves forward toward the winner of the trick, except as you can see here, the ship takes a damage because there's a tentacle symbol. If there's 2 tentacle symbols, like wheel tentacle and wheel tentacle, then the ship moves forward, but then there's 2 damages. So what's a damage in this game? Well, what's causing the damage is this Kraken, and as you can see over here in the Kraken deck, you have, like we had, those 1s and 2s of the suits that have more Kraken symbols on it. So when you take a damage, like let's say this was the next trick and this person won it 7 and 3, and there were 2 wheels, so it does move the ship toward them in 1 movement. But again, like we were just talking about, since there was a tentacle here, the ship takes a damage. So you're going to draw the top card of the Kraken deck and add it to the supply. This is important because at the end of the hand, the supply and the player's hands and then the discard all get shuffled up and redealt. So now there's more of these cards in the deck for the second and on round. So you might be asking, oh no, all this damage to the ship, how do we hurt the Kraken? Well, perfect timing on that question, because the next action, as you can see down here, cannon and then Kraken symbol, and that damages a Kraken. So if there's ever a cannon and a Kraken in a trick, the cannon is going to shoot the Kraken, and then the Kraken card is going to go flipped onto the bottom of the Kraken deck. So that's how to get it out of the hand, out of the supply, out of the discard, so it's not in the player's hands overall. Again, this player who won the trick will just win the trick, they'll discard this card, and they'll lead to the next trick. So now we're down to the final 2 actions. As you can see here, cannon does something special. So if 2 players play a cannon into the trick, you actually get to flip over one of the face down surplus cards and get to do whatever is on the symbol that you flipped. So let's say the top person plays this 4 blue cannon, and the bottom person, since they don't have any blue, they can play whatever they want. They play a 4 gray cannon. Since it's cannon in the trick, that's going to trigger the flipping of the supply action. I don't know if I fully mentioned it. I think all of my examples have been on suit, but the symbols trigger off suit. It's not like, since this is not blue, it doesn't trigger. You always check the symbols no matter the suits. So getting back to this example, cannon, you're going to flip over any of the face down cards. You're going to trigger that ability. As you can see on the back of here, it has a nice player aid of what happens when you do the cannon action, and what simply you flip what you get. So if you flip a cannon, you just flip again. So we flipped a cannon, we're going to flip one more time. We got a mermaid, which is perfect segue into the last action. So what's going to happen here is the same as the bottom action here. Remember how there's a mermaid in the bottom of each of the suits, the number 9, the highest card in the game? Well, if players ever play mermaid, then you trigger the bottom action, which is one of the best ones in the game. It's where the ship gets to move straight 1 space. So instead of in 2 tricks where it could move maybe up once and then down once, you can, with a mermaid action, move straight. So it's super efficient and super effective. So getting back to the cannon example, if a mermaid's flipped, it's super amazing because you get to move forward 1 space as if you just did a mermaid trick. So players will be playing back and forth until one of the players hits 4 tricks. That will end the round. you'll move the round token marker. Then you're going to check what number the Kraken tracker is, and you're going to add that many cards to the surplus area. So since it's at 3, 1, 2, 3, you're going to add that there. Then you're going to shuffle up the leftover hands, the supply, any discard, and you're going to shuffle, redeal 9 to each player with any surplus to the side. So the surplus is going to grow as you play the rounds. Then you're going to start again with an exchange, except in the next round, the next player is going to lead. So I've already said how the players can win. It's by getting the ship to the anchor before the end of the 5th round. But how can they lose? Well, speaking of the 5th round, if the 5th round ends and the players haven't gotten the ship to any of the spaces, so either here, here, or here, by the end of that 5th round, the players will lose. Also, you may have noticed these clouds and the clouds over here on the round tracker. If the player's ship doesn't pass these clouds by the start of the 3rd and the 5th round, the players succumb to the storm, and that's another way they lose. So let's say at the end of the 2nd round, it gets moved here. This would be safe because the ship is here, but if the player is here or behind, maybe they're back here, the players would lose. So you really have to keep moving, not just all the way here to at the end of the 5th round, but throughout the game. These are kind of checkpoints that you have to get past. And there are 2 more endgame conditions which have to do with the Kraken deck, which I haven't explained. So notice how there's this card right here, which is double backed, and you can always see it in the deck. If you're going to add cards from the Kraken, like let's say this was the end of the 2nd round and they have to add cards, you would go 1, 2, 3, and if this card is ever added to the surplus area, it's going to trigger its effect, and we can look at it here. It kind of just says what it does. So it says, if this card would be added to the supply, place it behind the other cards in the Kraken deck and advance the Kraken track. If there are no other cards in the Kraken deck, immediately advance to death. Yikes, that's not good. So this would go to the bottom of the Kraken deck, just like we talked about, and then this would advance 1 space. If it did ever advance to the death, you would lose, or again, if this is the only card in the Kraken deck, like this was added, this would move all the way to the death and then players would die. So those are 2 other ways to lose. Again, this is why a huge part of the game is killing those Krakens with the cannons. Like, you know, we talked about earlier, if there's a cannon and a Kraken symbol, this goes to the bottom of the deck, because then you pad the deck and make this trigger less, which means you're adding less cards in between the rounds and you're living. One thing to note about the movement is these islands block movement. Ships can't move through islands. Who could have guessed? So if a player wins a trick with a certain movement, like let's say they played that 8 and then this person was offsuit with the 1, but an island was in the way, then the ship doesn't move at all. And in this brutal case, you would still add a Kraken card to the deck. Oof. Movement is blocked in both ways. Like let's say the players are here and they try to do a mermaid movement. The island is in the way, so it blocks the mermaid movement as well. Finally, looking at these tiles, if the ship ever lands on one of these Kraken symbols, you're immediately going to add a Kraken card from the Kraken deck to the surplus. And that could be in addition to any that get added from the trick. Like let's say the players were on this spot and they played this trick. They would add for this symbol here, and then also add another one for moving onto the tile. So there are a lot of things working against the player. So what can they do? Well, every player has an ability, like I said at the start of the game. So this player's ability is, if you win a 4th trick, you can actually win another trick, which allows the round to last longer and letting players do more, which is great. And then this player is, if you ever win with the same number on ship cards, it's actually a move of a mermaid as opposed to a move once in your direction. Super fun. There are other powers like this one, where if you do the cannon, you can actually flip 2 cards from the surplus and then choose which one you want. There's this person who lets you choose which direction you move if you play a certain card. This one gets to look at your card that you get from the exchange before you exchange back. So that's how to play the base game of Sail. There are also some extra tiles that I helped design, so I'm super excited to show off. One of them is the Whirlpool, where if you land in it, you just continue your movement more. Let's say that you move the ship here, and then you move the ship up. You would actually continue up once. It's really fun to have if maybe there's maps you want to design that might be super long, or maybe it's a little bit challenging and you want to add that to make it a little bit more fair because you're struggling to move your ship far enough. That's a great tile to add. Some of the maps have fun moments where it might be really beneficial to use, but maybe there's a tentacle right after it. So you're trying to weigh your options of whether you want to use it or not. And it's really nice because if you mermaid into it, boop, it's actually like a double mermaid moment. Who knows? There's a lot of fun things you could do with it. Maybe there might even be an island right there to block that. Who knows? Next is the crow's nest tile. So when you land on this, the players get to exchange a card, just like in the exchange phase, which is really helpful. And then finally, this symbol, which is another ship. If you land on this, you get to kill Kraken in the supply. So some super fun tiles to add a lot to the game. There's also some other characters that don't have art for them yet, but they do things like let you exchange again, or let you draw from the supply, look at the card and pick any card in your hand and put it back to the supply. So then that can still be flipped face up to do some really fun combo moves. So that is Sail, and huge grain of salt before we get into this. Not only is this a Kickstarter preview, but second huge grain of salt, I was hired to do some development work on the game itself. I came up with some character roles and some tile ideas that I'll get into a little bit later in this kind of final thought slash designer diary of sorts. So 2 huge grains of salt. So everything I say, keep that in mind. Before I knew that Sail was going to be part of All Play, I covered this when it was just Hameln Cave. Back when I was doing different types of videos, I covered it as Rodney and Matthew and Paula and everyone that watched it played. So that video is kind of kooky, but it has my sincere thoughts. I know I was doing a really bad accent that was dipping into Australian as Matthew, but it was genuinely how I felt about the game. I feel like it's an incredibly solid 2-player cooperative trick-taking game. At the time, I compared it to Fox and Force Duet, which I feel like is an apt comparison. Not only they're 2-player cooperative trick-taking games, but both of them have that balancing of when to win and when to lose tricks. I don't want to talk too much about final thoughts just because of the whole development and talking about what I like about the game seems a little obvious because I helped make part of it. But I do just want to say, at the time when I covered it, I loved the fact that it balanced what players want. Like, you want to kill, it was pirates in that game, it's the Kraken in this one. You want to manage the threats just enough to be able to get by. A lot of games I'll win by just limping along and like barely making it to the end. And it has a lot of those nail biter finishes in a game. I think this has a lot of those wild moments in the game. I was playtesting some of the new stuff I designed with the wonderful Chris, and we were playing this game where in the game, if you play in Sail, it's 2 cannons. If you play 2 cannons, you flip over one of the surplus cards. And if it's a mermaid, you get to go mermaid movement. And we did that 3 times in a row. And it was just insane. We were just, I mean, I get a little bit excited. I was screaming. I think Chris was also very excited. I don't want to speak for Chris, but maybe he was also yelling. It just leads to just such memorable moments and such kind of, maybe it's stand-up moments. Those like very tense nail-biter finishes, whether it's the storm that's going to get you or the Kraken. There just has so many ways that you can't lose, and it's such a difficult game that when you do pull it off, it feels great. I talked to someone once when they were lamenting the fact that the game Ghost Stories is super hard and that they don't like how you can barely win it like once out of like 20 plays or something. But then it was funny because in the same breath they were saying how that one time or the couple times that they did win it, it felt so great. So I feel like this game has that. The difficulty is pretty hard, but it just leads to such sweet victories because it is that much more hard. And maybe getting into a little bit of what I designed. So again, huge grain of salt. But I noticed the game is quite hard. So we kind of poked around with the idea of characters that let you attack the Kraken more, which is super helpful. Sometimes you'll just not be in a good situation to do that with the hand you're dealt. So some characters help you do that. Like there's this one character I designed where you have to exchange at random, which boo, stinks. But after the exchange, you can kill a Kraken in your hand, which is super, super nice. And the fact that you're randomly passing has a funny kind of over-under where does your partner want to pass you a Kraken just in case you lose one of the Krakens in your hand, but maybe there's going to be enough, especially near the end of the game when you have a ton of Kraken cards, that you're probably fine not to have to pass them a Kraken. I found that the new characters, especially like there's one new character that lets you exchange twice. There's ones that give the player a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more agency that helps mitigate a bit of the card draw. So like in the original Hameln Cave, in the end, there were some times where you just couldn't move enough in the last hand, or you couldn't kill enough Krakens in like the 4th or 3rd hand. Through no fault of your own, you would just get dealt that. And it just felt tough to like do pretty well and then just get a bad hand. So some of the development work that I worked on focused on the idea of having the board or the characters balance that luck, that maybe like the unfortunate luck. So instead of having those pre-designed boards that flip, they're now doing tiles. And I thought that was a great opportunity to have tiles that let you exchange, that let you try to go out of your way to attack a Kraken that was in the surplus. Or maybe have players get an extra movement on a whirlpool tile. So there's like a new tile where you just continue your movement, which is really fun because you can set up really cool things where if you time a mermaid, like a really difficult mermaid situation, if you time that just right, you can whirlpool and do a double mermaid, which is really, really nice. Speaking of double mermaid, some of the characters in the original Hameln Cave felt like either it was something you did at the very end. So there was this one character who, if you did pirate and you won with them, you got to mermaid, but you would have to add 2 pirates into the surplus area, which was just brutal. So you'd really only do it at the end. And I felt like if you're gonna do it at the end, make it like a little bit harder and make it even crazier. So we tweak that character to where if you do pirate and it's the same number pirate, then you actually do a double mermaid move, which is way harder and is way cooler. But also it's not like just broken because a double pirate move, a double mermaid move isn't always amazing. There's so many like islands and edges of the map in the way that you actually kind of have to really finesse it, on top of the fact that you have to finesse a same number pirate. So a lot of these design tweaks make it what you want out of the game, I think. Whether you want to balance a bad hand more, whether you were dying because the deck was too hard to get through or you weren't moving your ship enough, or if you just didn't have enough choice in the game. These new characters and tiles and everything kind of add that to the game. If you go back and watch the Hameln Cave Final Thoughts, a few of the issues that I had with the game are now gone in Sail, which I absolutely love. I felt the difficulty in Hameln Cave was wild. I've played a lot of it now, and I've only beaten level 3 a few times. So the fact that I've never beaten the 4th level in a game that I've played a ton, kind of a sign. And I think I'm an okay trick taker at this point. I've got this many years on my belt of trick taking and I still can't beat it on the hardest level. I think it's a sign that the game's a little tough. I have a friend who I showed this to, and he played with his partner I think like 15, 20 times, and they have only beat level 1 a couple times. So it's a very tough game. Often when I show people, will kind of just get destroyed in the first level. So what I like is, in the new system in Sail, is it's using not just those flippable boards, so you only have 4 levels, like no matter what. It uses tiles where you set up the map, and it could be whatever you want it to be. So they have in the base game those original 4 levels. You can still make those original 4 levels, but I helped design some, and I'm hoping, you know, if anybody wants to, they can like design their own maps, which is really exciting and really cool. But I designed my own maps, which use kind of the new tiles, the ones that give you some extra movement or give you exchanging when you land on them, or kill a Kraken in the surplus if you land on it. Those are sometimes a little easier because I think level 1 is a little too hard in the base game. It has like a little bit of an easier stepping stone into the game, and some other scenarios that use the new tiles in interesting ways. So I just love the fact that you can customize, or maybe make it easier or shorter or longer, you know, make it super hard. You can make a level 5 for all I know. But I love the fact that the map itself can be harder, easier, different, more fun, tighter, you know, whatever you want it to be. I also noted in the old Final Thoughts that some of the roles just felt like you kind of had to use them in the later rounds just because it got so hard, like the one that lets you win 5 tricks instead of just 4. I think the newer pirate roles are really good and almost make it so you can have some more choice once you start playing the really, really hard levels, because they are also good. So that is Sail, and again, huge grain of salt or 2, but I think it took Hameln Cave, which I really enjoyed, and it added customizing maps and new characters that are a little bit more balanced and more interesting for when it gets really, really difficult, because the game does get really, really difficult. But then it just gives so many more options for players to tweak things how they like it, or maybe play harder if you want, or easier. Hopefully easier. It's a very tough game. And it took everything I love about Hameln Cave and made it that much better. And it's a gorgeous production. Weberson Santiago just killed it. So that is Sail. Go check it out, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Now that's our tortillas with our
Kathy,
beans
that
and meat.
smell
Oh,
is
it does. Doesn't it smell great?
unbelievable.
I'm gonna add on a little bit of lettuce and tomato.
Get this.
And my daughter made this up. These are crushed nacho chips, and it just gives it a little zing.
Fiesta.
Fiesta, exactly.
Hi, Billy Plays here, otherwise known as Tricky Billy. That's right, there's actually a game called Tricky Billy. Isn't that crazy? That's right, and I'm here to talk to you about the game Sail. Hi, Billy